What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 129. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hey, it's been a while.
It has been a while, Connor.
In this setting.
We just did the math before hitting record, but the live stream was privy to it. You can watch us record these podcasts live over at twitch.tv/2pennygames every Sunday, sometime between 1 to 5 p.m. is usually when we get that started out. So we're figuring it out. I'm about to move back to school, and we're going to be, kind of up in the air in terms of scheduling. But as of right now, it'll always be Sunday sometime in the afternoon when we start this off. This is your Two Penny Gamescast, your weekly video game news show in which me and Connor come to you with two topics, 2 pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. You can catch the show every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. You can also catch every Tuesday an episode of Hype, Have You Ever Played?, in which over a year ago, me and my good buddy Phil, we sat down and we played a game, or we showed each other a game that the other has never seen before. We are in the final hours of the Kingdom Hearts 2 playthrough, so go check those out, go show that some love. Every Saturday, we have an episode of The Piggy Bank, also hosted by Phil Shoemaker. That goes live every Saturday at 8 a.m. Please check that out. We just recorded next week's episode because just the way our schedules work out, it's easy to record that far in advance. So that'll go live Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time, in which we talked about the top 10 best open worlds. So make sure to check that out. And then, what am I missing? Oh, next week, The Last of Us HBO show starts airing, starts premiering, starts whatever they do with these streaming services. They just put them out in the way that they put them out. So weekly, me, Connor, Phil, we're going to sit down and we're going to do a reaction/review of every episode of HBO's The Last of Us. Starting off strong, Connor. I don't know if you caught all the headlines, but that first episode's supposed to be like an hour and a half long.
I do. I know that.
Yeah.
Doing a classic first episode thing.
It's a chunky, it's a healthy episode right there. That's chunky. So I'm very interested to see how that's going. Connor, it's been a minute since we've done this.
It is. Back on the horse.
Back on the horse. Yeah, the last 2 weeks we haven't really been covering news. Last week's episode was our top 10 games of the year alongside the Arkham Asylum review. Both are up right now. Connor, how'd you feel about that Arkham Asylum, baby?
I didn't like it. You can find out how much I didn't like it if you go watch the short that we did, or that Tavin, I should say, did. Very good short, collection of shorts actually. We all got our own little opinion on it, and Tavin did his little editing magic, little things.
Yep. And then the top 10s are going to be broken down into shorts as well. Connor, I have your short coming out tomorrow, Monday. So at the time you're hearing this on YouTube, it's already out. Go catch that, or it will be out soon, actually, in a couple hours. Shorts. There's a lot of stuff to keep in my head, guys.
By the time you're hearing this, it's definitely out.
Yeah, and then the week before, me and Phil sat down, because you were out of town, and we sat down and talked about our most anticipated games of 2023, which was a fun little episode to break down and go through. A lot of great games coming out in 2023, it looks like. But that's not what we're here for, Connor. Let's drop some sense on them. Let's go ahead and start with our first topic of the day. My first penny. Man, it looks like Sony's been having a good time over there. And we got an IGN article talking about all of the things they announced and talked about over at CES. This is by Logan Plant. Sony's CES 2023 press conference has wrapped up, and the company shared a handful of updates for PlayStation gamers. The headline is Project Leonardo, which is a brand new accessibility controller kit in development for PlayStation 5. Sony also shared updates on the Gran Turismo movie, PSVR 2, and more. Now, the big thing, I think, Connor, you and I can both agree on, is Project Leonardo, the new accessibility controller kit for PlayStation 5. Logan Plant continues, Project Leonardo is PlayStation's brand new accessibility controller kit that's currently in development. There's no word yet on release date or price, but Leonardo aims to, quote, remove barriers to gaming and help players with disabilities play more easily, more comfortably, and for longer periods where am I? Longer periods on PS5. It was developed with contributions from accessibility experts, community members, and game developers. I saw a lot of the big accessibility vocalists chime in when this got announced. Steven Spawn, Steven Saylor all jumped in and gave their sort of impressions and stuff, and they were speaking very, very positively towards this. Overall, this is fantastic. There's let me see if I can pull up a couple of details in here. But you know, as many of you know, I'm a big advocate for accessibility in gaming. There's no reason that everybody can't play a video game if we can help them. And you know, some game developers from software need to get with the program on things like that.
Yeah, it's a topic that has been really brought up in the past couple of years for good reason, because you know, video games aren't like sports. You don't have to have any you know, special physical ability to try and play some game like basketball, and obviously certain people aren't going to be able to do those things, and video games are their one outlet. And sometimes, due to the way the game's made, they can't even play that. So thankfully, now that we're getting more of this, it's just kind of ingrained in gaming culture and in the gaming industry. You know, this is just a reasonable next step to have a, you know, something like this be just, you know, on the market all the time for anyone who needs it.
And admittedly, probably for good reason, Sony is getting heavily criticized right now for remaking games that are super recent and easily accessible in terms of, like, you can get your hands on a copy of the game pretty easily. The Last of Us Part 1 came out last year. There's talks of the Horizon Zero Dawn remake. I think the main point of that is they were trying to retroactively go back and add accessibility features to those games that you can't just add easily to every single video game. It kind of needs to be there from the beginning. On PS5, players will be, with the new Leonardo Project controller, players will be able to customize their game experience with button mapping, where the controller's buttons can be mapped to any supported function on the controller, and players can map two functions onto the same button. The PS5 will also include up to 3 control profiles, where players can store their preferred settings and easily switch between them. Project Leonardo can be used on its own or paired with an additional Project Leonardo or DualSense controller. It's also designed to be compatible with external third-party devices via its 4 3.5mm aux ports, which is all great. I love that it's so flexible that you can even use a DualSense alongside with it. So maybe someone can pick up a DualSense and help you out if your hands aren't working the way that it needs to. Someone can just pick that up and help you out real quick. Or you can have a DualSense in one hand, the Leonardo controller in the other, you know, just depending on what you need and how to do that. The more flexibility with these things, always the better. I believe it was, I can't remember which one it was. It was either Steven Spawn or Steven Saylor, who said, don't compare this to Xbox's accessibility controller one for one. They're trying to do different things, but the more options we have, the better. So this is just a win overall, and good on Sony for finally putting in the effort to give us some hardware advances, as opposed to just the software things, which they've been very good about for the last few years since The Last of Us Part 2.
Well, usually when we've opened up this first story, it's not this positive, but it's a good change of pace.
It is nice. It is nice. Mm-hmm. And then further, just to continue with our CES breakdown, we got a Gran Turismo movie sneak peek revealed. Sony shared a first look at upcoming Gran Turismo movie, which is set to hit theaters this August. The footage had words from stars Archie Medicui. I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, sir. Orlando Bloom and David Harbour, and showed off the movie's combination of real-life racing and Gran Turismo action. My understanding is that this movie is supposed to be like kids who play the game get an opportunity to race cars in real life or something like that. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, because the weird thing about that is you can just kind of do a car game and say, this is the Gran Turismo movie. Mm-hmm. Is there really much you can do? Obviously, they're doing that, but that doesn't seem like... Seems like out of all the games to make a movie about, they're just doing it because of the brand recognition and nothing else.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah, sure, why not? give us a Gran Turismo movie alongside the fucking Twisted Metal show, I guess. Who knows?
Mhm.
PlayStation 5 passes 30 million units sold. Jim Ryan announced on PlayStation Stage that the PS5 had sold 30 million units. Ryan also stated that the PS5 shortage is essentially over, saying, quote, everyone who wants a PS5 should have a much easier time finding one at retailers globally, starting from this point forward. Cool. It's over. You can walk into your local Best Buy, grab one right now.
How many years was that? 2?
Damn near 3.
3, man.
Yeah, it's we've had these consoles for a while now, so it's crazy that we got this deep into it, and people are still having trouble getting their hands on it. 30 million in 3 years. That's still good numbers. Good numbers. They're doing good stuff. Every single one is being sold. So this is all exciting, and hopefully this means we can finally close the book. I think with the passing of God of War Ragnarok, it means we can close the book on the PlayStation 4, and we are now in the current gen that is the PS5. So enough with this cross-console bullshit. Give me the 5 games. Let's explore the power of this bad boy right here. That's been sitting on my TV stand for a while. I'm greedy?
Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, Gran Turismo 7 is getting PSVR 2 support, and Beat Saber is coming to PSVR 2. That's great for those who are interested in PSVR 2. I'll be taking a pass because I don't have the space or the money for it right now. Beat Saber coming to PSVR 2, not launching with PSVR 2? That's weird.
Tavin.
Yeah.
I'm a little upset that you're not going for that PSVR 2. I spent $500? $550.
$550.
On a $550. Oh my god. It's worse than never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Worse.
It's expensive.
Yeah. I think you can do more with $550 than that.
What are you saying?
You could do. I'd spend my money on something else before I bought that.
Oh,
PS5's one thing, but the VR is like, okay, well,
for sure, Connor. Eventually, like when we have the space to do it and the reason to do it, and games are coming out at a solid pace for it, I'll consider it and think about it. Because I'm not opposed to spending $500 on something, over $500 on something if like I'm gonna use it. The thing is, am I gonna use it? Probably every once in a while, but I would rather it be a little more, what's the word? Prevalent in my daily usage. So, anyways, that's about it for the CES. Connor, anything else you want to add on to any of these stats and factors and things that we've broken down so far?
Not really. It just seemed to be a very industry focused.
Yep.
Thing. Not really, making you super excited, but important things are going on in there. And, namely the controller, the accessibility controller, but all the other stuff, it's sure.
Yeah, but we're all into that. So let's go ahead and move on to our second topic of the day. Your first penny of the day. Resident Evil 4 Remake isn't cutting out the island section. Developer confirms. This is from the Gaming Bolt by Shapankar Parajit. Capcom has taken an interesting approach to remaking Resident Evil games up to this point, with each remake changing things up from the original game radically in some form or the other, particularly where 2020's Resident Evil 3 was concerned. That didn't go down well with a number of fans, many of whom feared whether a similar approach had been adopted for RE4. It seems, however, that none of the major sections from the original Resident Evil 4 are going to be cut out in the remake. In the recent issue of Edge magazine, the development team of Resident Evil 4 confirmed the island section, which was the final section of the game, and has proven to be quite divisive over the years, will be present in the remake as well. The project's development team apparently divvied up the 3 main sections of the game, those being the village, the castle, and the island, in the early stages of development, worked on the sections individually, and then reconvened to go over and edit each other's work. Interestingly, the developer said that the island is going to have a lot more to it than the original game, though they stopped short of going into further detail. Given the significant shift in tone and pacing that the island brought with it in the original RE4, it should be interesting to see how it's handled in the remake. Not too long ago, it was confirmed that the remake will be roughly as long as the original game, so the fact that no major sections have been cut out doesn't come as a massive surprise. I mean, I disagree with that last part. They could have very easily cut something out and replaced it with something new, but Connor, I like this. This is cool. I'm into this. Yeah, let's stay faithful, but let's rebuild it, recontextualize it, and add a little more to it to give it some equal depth, some equal creativity and level design. Because if you look back at our Resident Evil 4 review for our game club, which is our monthly video game show, right now we're playing Hades. Come play Hades with us, and then the first weekend of February we'll have a review for Hades. But our review for the original Resident Evil 4 was quite positive, but I was highly critical of the last half of the game, in which I felt that the level design, specifically in the island, was extremely lacking, and I felt that, a lot of the cool gameplay elements took a backseat to gimmicks to freshen up gameplay. And it didn't play well for me. I also don't like that everyone in the island is toting a gun, but who knows if they're going to change that or not. How are you on this?
Keeping the base framework of Resident Evil 4, I think is pretty important when you're doing a remake like this. Obviously, if you're doing something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, you get more leeway because you establish yourself as something different. But when you're making a remake, even if it'd be easy to cast off the bad aspects of the previous game, like the island, which obviously people have in that mind as being the worst part of Resident Evil 4, at least as largely as a whole, it's good to just not give in to people who would want it taken out and just leaving it as is and just making a focus to just improve it. Because it's not like it's unsalvageable. I mean, it's a remake, so you can build it out however you want. If people had an issue with the layout, you can change that. You can change the enemies that are there. When you're doing a remake, it's not like you're beholden to any of the things that happened in the past game. If anything, if you keep it relatively the same and just learn from the mistakes of that time and add the new functions into the game that are, going to be intrinsic to the new mechanics that Resident Evil 4 Remake is going to bring to the table, I think this is clearly the best move, and happy that they kept with it. Especially because it seemed like they may have had some kind of, conversation of removing it. And ultimately, if they did have that conversation, they did the right thing.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think this feels like a culmination of all of Resident Evil over the last couple of years. From Resident Evil 7 Biohazard all the way up to Village. This feels like, okay, we've learned a lot of lessons. We've done a lot of different creative takes and things and so forth. So, Resident Evil 7 was a way to put Resident Evil back on the map and had some really cool design. And we learned that people really, really appreciate really intrinsic level design. And, they're not afraid to backtrack, and they're not afraid of slow, methodical games if your level design and your creativity of going around is well thought out alongside the threat being appropriate. Which I think Resident Evil 4, for as classic as that game is, took a very different approach where they want to throw something at you every 5 minutes. They want something to pop and have you go either jump, as a quick jump scare, or like to go like, oh shit, this is cool that this is happening. And it looks like they are not afraid to slow it down this time around, which is something that I personally would greatly appreciate, especially after the success of the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I think across the board, most people agree that is either A, the best Resident Evil game, or B, a very good remake of the original RE2. I know there's, some detractors that get deep into the systems of RE2 and go, man, I forget what it's called, the Spark system or the Zing system, whatever the fuck it's called, in which you would you had the opportunity to like pick up a gun or pick up some extra inventory slots, and then when you ran through as the other person, that item would be gone. And so you could kind of remix it that way, and also the different order that you played resulted in a different story, whereas Resident Evil 2, repeats a lot of content to give you the two different stories, whereas the original game did not. And then Resident Evil 3 got a lot of critique for cutting out the clock tower sequence, which a lot of people said sucked anyway, so I don't know why we're complaining about that, but, I guess it's because they charged fucking $60 or $40, $50, whatever they charged for it, and, it wasn't exactly up to the same par as the RE2 remake. And then, Village, I think being widely accepted as a good game, just not the best Resident Evil game. I just think we've learned a lot of lessons here, and I think they've all happened in enough time for us to sort of react. Maybe less so Village. They couldn't so much react to Village, but they could, take those notes and go, okay, how can we kind of tweak this to make it a little better off of the back of that? So I'm very excited for Resident Evil 4. It's currently probably my most anticipated game right now, and everything that I've seen in gameplay footage, in trailers, in remarks from developers like this tells me that they know what they're doing when they were putting this together. So I'm very, very excited to see where we land with this. Could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wrong before.
I'm happy. I want to see where Resident Evil goes after 4. That's the thing I'm interested in, because
yeah.
you got to know what they're going to do with 4, but with 5 and 6, anything beyond that, uncharted territory.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they would change things.
Dramatically change things, and I think most people would be okay if they dramatically change things.
Yeah.
I do hope co-op comes back for 5, but I would understand if they're like, we're not doing that, and I'd be like, all right, that's fair. But yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait. And then also, I want to know what we're doing with the mainline series, if we're even going to return to the mainline series anytime soon, or what's going on there. That's very interesting. I'm glad to hear that they're, we're closing the chapter, we're closing the book on the Ethan Winters story.
Yep. Ended with Rose's story thing that came out recently.
Yeah, which I heard not great things about. Moving on to our third topic of the day, my second penny. Bungie is working on a number of unannounced projects with Sony. This is from VGC by Tom Ivan. Bungie creative lead Tom Farnsworth has said the studio is working on a number of unannounced projects with parent company Sony. Excuse me. Yeah, you ever take a sip of water and then suddenly it's not sitting well with your insides? That's what just happened. Anyways, Farnsworth said in a Twitter post that the studio has completely changed how it develops games and how it does business over the course of 25 plus Destiny content releases. Quote, moving from strictly boxed products to live service games. He continued, and with the support of Sony, we are working on a number of unannounced projects too. In addition to its ongoing work on Destiny 2, Bungie said in February 2021 that it planned to bring at least one new IP to market before 2025. And last June, the studio was acquired by PlayStation maker Sony for $3.6 billion. Prior to the deal's completion, Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida said the acquisition of Halo creator Bungie was partly motivated by a desire for PlayStation to become more of a multi-platform business. Quote, we believe it will be a catalyst to enhance our live game service capabilities, he said. Our acquisition of Bungie also represents a major step forward in becoming a more multi-platform. Sony has said it's planning to have 12 live service titles in the market by its fiscal year ending in March 2026, up from 3 during the current business year. So, Connor, Bungie is working on a number of unannounced projects with Sony and plans to have a new IP before 2025.
If you remember back in the day when we were on the high of playing Halo 3, it was on Xbox, and it was always just like, oh, the Xbox is the best thing ever over the console wars when compared to the PS3, which, whatever on that, that whole issue. But
dumb kids doing dumb things.
At the time, I would never have expected Bungie to be working so hand in hand with Sony, and now here they are.
Here we are.
Kind of gone a weird direction, and I'm welcome for it.
Right. Now this begs the question. I think Destiny 2 staple. It's not going anywhere. Everybody's got it. It's fine. Does Bungie's new IP come to Xbox?
Sony seems to be always seems to be dead set on not allowing for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it always, you think Bungie, you think Microsoft. But will that change anything?
Yeah.
Not really.
Well, we're in a weird space where Bungie's acquisition wasn't a full-out acquisition. They expressed a desire to stay multi-platform. The thing is does that only mean for Destiny 2, Destiny 3, whatever we get in the future years of Destiny? Or does it mean, every game that Bungie puts out? And then this is also when we covered the Bungie acquisition last year. I made the point of saying, PlayStation wants a live service game. They want to expand their multiplayer portfolio. They want to expand the ways in which they can monetize their games. And I think Bungie is the clear front runner for successful live service games right now. I think they do it the best. I think they've had the most impressive run of it, especially in their Destiny 2 era. And I think it only makes sense to have Bungie be sort of the backbone in building out these live service games that they want to have. And I think it's with the support of Sony, we are working on a number of unannounced projects too. This just means that their team is being divvied up and they're working on the Horizon multiplayer game. They're helping out with Last of Us Factions in whatever way that they're helping out. They're working on, whatever is going to be whatever in the future. You know what I'm saying? The Haven Studios game. They're probably helping out and doing a heavy hand in that as well. The thing that interests me, of course, is them saying that they're going to be out with a new IP by 2025. This is exciting to me because Destiny is just too big and too complicated for me to dive in right now, and I would like a fresh start to be able to dive in and see what Bungie is able to create, especially under the PlayStation umbrella. And this was more, I've always said Bungie was more of a strategy move than it was like we're going to acquire you so that you can make great games for us. This was to sort of like rising tide, raises all ships kind of thing with the Bungie acquisition.
Possibly. I mean, Sony is known for just kind of really shutting down on their own market, trying to have as much control over it as possible.
Yes.
So, we always talk about when it comes to acquisitions of any kind, it carries the risk of it being monopolized. Them abusing their ownership of something by, limiting it to other people just so they can make more money. And that always is in the back of my throat, leaving a bad taste with this story.
I suppose, but this comes we're coming right off the back of Sony throwing a big ass fit about Call of Duty being acquired by Microsoft and how they're going to make that an exclusive game or whatever. And I think if Sony would allow it, Xbox would absolutely allow Call of Duty to be on PlayStation. Xbox wants Game Pass on PlayStation. I think that's an undeniable fact. That conversation has definitely happened. And it's just Sony, playing hardball with it all. Now, when we talk about exclusives, when we talk about monopolization, I've been saying for a minute now, the fear of monopolization in the games industry, specifically with this Activision Blizzard deal, is just that if we allow this deal to happen, that means deals of this size can happen no matter what, and we can't go back on that. So that's really where the driving point is. Bungie working on exclusive games for PlayStation alongside Destiny 2. Destiny's not going anywhere. Is a far cry from any type of monopolization thing. Now, it does bleed into the fact that, okay, 3 companies own every single video game on the market, but we're so far away from that, and so much can happen. And, the government's already got an eye on the industry when it comes to this. They're not going to take their eye off. They're here to fuck with us for a while. And debatably, this all reaches back to, I would say, EA's Battlefront 2 with how they fumbled the monopolization in that game. That really drew ire from the government in several states banning, looking to perform legislation against games like this. Government interference in the industry is coming. We've avoided it for a long time. That's why we have ESRB ratings, is so that we could do it and the government didn't do it to us. But, video games are too profitable for the government to just let be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm curious. I mean, I'm just curious as to where Bungie's trajectory is now with this deal. That's what's fascinating me the most. I think it's clear that Bungie has no interest in putting out, regular box titles like they used to back in the day with Halo and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think from now until the end of time, they will be a live service modeled game developer. And I think after this Sony deal, they're looking to expand. And I would assume that, they're just constantly hiring and growing their teams because they're going to be, they've got their Destiny team working. They're putting out content at a solid enough pace. You're getting a new Destiny expansion, every 2 years? Something like that, it feels like.
Yeah. They come out with them quick.
They're
Seems like they
doing
do.
pretty well with it. And they're constantly updating it and providing content for players to come week to week to week. I understand the Destiny community is always mad at the game, but I think that's just where video games are now. When
Hmm.
you're so enraptured in one ecosystem, you're just mad at the stuff that most gamers won't see.
Right.
Um, and so I'm curious to see where this leads them in the future.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Like always.
It's a big wait and see on that one for sure. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into our next and final topic of the day. Connor, we got a couple of, this is your final penny. We got a couple of Last of Us factions / multiplayer games details this last week or so. And I don't know, man. Okay, cool. So the big thing about it is, let me pull it up here, is we got some concept art for the multiplayer game. We are pulling from Wario64's Twitter for this. And you can see it on screen. We've got two guys hanging out in a, rundown Last of Us world. Looks like shit's fucked up. Big yacht boat or something. Could be an area in a map. I don't know if we're doing... This is cool. Great. Thank you for providing for us this stuff. What is the game? What is it? Is it a battle royale? Is it a Division clone? Is it... What is this game? Is it a Rainbow Six inspired game? What is it?
The thing is, they seem to be really dead set on trying to create a new multiplayer experience, not just like a typical one. So I would like to say kind of like a what do you call it? Escape from Tarkov, where it's a lot more open world. You're trying to achieve a certain objective of some kind within the world against other players. Maybe that objective is different. I don't know. I don't believe Tarkov does that. I'm just implying that sounds like something Naughty Dog would do for their multiplayer thing. Because with the Last of Us, what they did was they made the whole faction system be a thing. You collect supplies from dead enemies, and you have to get enough each game. And if you don't, well, your survivors are going to start dying. And it's like there's this whole survival aspect to it, but not one that's really requiring a lot of oversight. Like, it's not micromanaging things. You're not trying to build your actual community. Maybe they could do something like that on a grander scale, doing those things, or maybe they'll go a completely different route with it. But I can't see it doing something that the Division has been doing for years now, or just doing another battle royale game in a series that keeps on getting those. I think Naughty Dog is intelligent enough in that space to see how things are going and say, we could try and do something new that'll make people jump on this game, even if they're not Last of Us fans. So I trust that they can make something good, based off how good the Last of Us multiplayer game was, as limited of attention it got from the developers. Just going wholesale into something like this, I think will yield a really good product.
I mean, I'm hoping so. They've said before that they do still have a narrative focus on this, so there will be quest lines or characters that you're seeing, cutscenes that play. As you go back to base after a match or something. Will there even be matches? Is my question. Like, the reason I bring Division up is because I think it's a pretty easy to translate the world of The Last of Us into the design aspects of the Division. You think of the quarantine zones in the Division where everyone's hanging out and having a good time, and it's a PvE world until you get into that quarantine zone, and then suddenly you're stabbing each other in the back, and you're money grubbing for resources and so forth. That's so clearly to me is yearning for The Last of Us, the world of The Last of Us, and so forth. I want to like when they say narrative focus, does that mean we're going to see characters from the games? Is Tommy in this game? Is Ellie in this game? Who's in this game? Is there people in this game that we know? Or are they just mouthpieces for your quest lines? Like, what does that matter? Does it have actual narrative weight in a strange amalgamation of multiplayer meets narrative that we've seen in some attempts in the past, but never like a full-blown thing? You mentioned like maybe some base building stuff, bringing resources back. I think that would play very well to the world of The Last of Us, and I think that'd be really interesting and fun. I just have questions. Do we have our own little like villages, and we can develop and customize these villages in the ways we want? I don't think these things are going to happen, but Naughty Dog, you've been so sparse with details that I'm fucking tired of talking about this game without knowing what the fuck it is.
And I think in that regard, they could just say something more in depth. You know, they don't have to do this whole big showcase thing, which seems like what they're leading up to doing to show you what they're going to offer. They could just give us some details. But, I mean, it seems like that's what's going to happen soon. So you won't have to wait much longer.
Anyways, they also came out and said Last of Us franchise has sold more than 37 million copies as of December 2022. Good for them. There's a blog post. Let me check the blog post here, Connor. See if there's anything else we were missing this year. I think Neil Druckmann said something, but I don't care.
What? You don't care?
No, I don't. Tell me what the fucking game is. Oh, that's what it was. It was he left the door open for a possible Last of Us 3, but I still say Last of Us 3 is a very long way away.
But we probably will.
Just more concept art and shit. Like, I just don't care about this shit, you know? Like, show me a trailer. Show me a gameplay. Give me a title. The title will tell me a lot. Is it
The
called
Last of Us 2 multiplayer? That'd be so funny.
Yeah, you know? However, I guess I'll say this. 37 million copies sold for The Last of Us, having 2 main entries into the game. 4 releases in total if you count the original game, the remaster, the remake, and part 2. Those are really good numbers for a game that has 2 entries into the franchise.
You know what? This is not what's going to happen at all. But what if this Last of Us multiplayer game is branded as The Last of Us Part 3? And that's how they weave the narrative into the multiplayer aspects somehow.
No, I think that's a marketing failure. Like, because when you say Last of Us Part 3, people are expecting a continuation of Ellie's story, or people are expecting a continuation, I guess, of Abby's story, or something like that. So you would need, people would expect your typical Naughty Dog experience from that. This, I think, it's just so clearly Last of Us with a subtitle. The Last of Us multiplayer, or like The Last of Us Factions, or The Last of Us Survival, Last of Us Quarantine. I don't fucking know, something like that.
Whatever, more likely is the case.
Probably not Quarantine off the back of the pandemic, but you know, you understand what I'm saying here.
No, I don't know.
Shut the fuck up.
How do you respond to that?
Connor, is there anything else you want to add about The Last of Us here?
Not really. I mean, I'm excited for what it can hold, but as you said before, they're not giving us details, and they can, but they haven't. So it's a thing I'm hopeful for, but definitely can fall flat.
And then just as a reminder, we're going to be doing weekly reviews of every Last of Us HBO episode that comes out starting next week. So keep an eye out for that. It will go live as soon as we record it, and we will be recording it live over at twitch.tv/2pennygames. So please join us for that every episode. You got plenty of time, either Saturday night or Sunday morning. Watch that episode. Come back to us in the evening and talk about it with us. It'll be more. We'll be more able to like talk to the chat and read the chat and so forth for that, as opposed to say the Piggy Bank or the Gamescast, where we're focused on developing a product. I'd like to see what the people's opinions are. How are they feeling? What is the temperature on the show as it develops, and so forth. Connor, are you excited about this show? I haven't checked in with you in a while. Ever since the trailers and stuff have come out. Like, what is your feeling on the show right now?
Very neutral on it. You know,
yeah?
I mean, because I won't lie, I had some kind of issue with it recently. I hadn't been paying attention to the interviews or what the creators have said or whatnot, but some have just fallen in my lap. And 2 things of note. One of which was that one of the lead writers basically said a really stupid comment about how...
Oh, I don't give a fuck about that. Yeah, I know.
Oh, but it is pretty... Yeah, I know. Where basically, if you hadn't seen it, what he said was... He basically made it seem like this show is on a different level than video games. Did the classic thing of like, well, video games are one thing, and it's kind of better when it's real people or something like that, as if they're not actually fictional characters. It's not indicative of whether the writing's going to be good or not, but just the mindset of one of the main writers having that is just pretty stupid.
It was clear that, well, he was also bigging up The Last of Us of like, oh, The Last of Us is grounded and real and you care about the characters, as if like a character-based story of value had never been told in the video game industry since its inception. I think he even quoted like, you're not just jumping on turtles or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, video games. Mario came out in the 90s, and then we didn't have another one until The Last of Us. Like,
I remember the turtles, and you jump on them and they go flying.
it's just it's a quote from someone in an interview that he was just running he was just giving an answer to whatever question they were asking or whatever the fuck, and he just he didn't know, he's not a gamer, and he didn't have the context of gaming and where gaming's been and where gaming had the ability to go past Super Mario Brothers. So I think clearly that was it was an ignorant statement. It was a statement bred of ignorance. But I think it's a matter of like, yo, like, did you play video games? Like, like, and this is why I kind of hope that adaptation works, that this adaptation works, because we saw the clear success from the Witcher Netflix show to the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, where they got another a huge boost in sales and stuff. That's why they did the Last of Us remake, so that they could get some of that. Mario, in some way, is going to get that same type of boost when that movie comes out and so forth. And you just kind of always see like a trending upward swing of sales with the success of a good adaptation and product.
Mm-hmm.
Which means television is more accessible than a video game to people who didn't grow up with video games. Like, everyone watches TV, not everyone plays video games. When they watch something and they enjoy it and they want to know more about it, they want to get invested in the world and see, where it came from and so forth. That's great. That invites people in, that broadens the horizons, that makes video games bigger and better as we go on. So, and it allows us to incorporate new ideas and get better adaptations of these works, so that, we can continue living in these worlds outside of their own medium. So, yeah, that shit was stupid. Basically, all of that to say that the dude was talking out the side of his mouth when he shouldn't.
The other thing, though, this is way more of a nuanced issue, if you could call it that, though I understand people that would take issue with it, which is that they kind of seem to be obviously basing it off Last of Us. The game is called The Last of Us, The Last of Us. So
it's the story of Joel and Ellie. Yeah.
It is, yeah, exactly. Now, with that story, from what I've what I come to understand from the one article that I read of an interview, was that they seem to have a very strong desire to want to make the characters themselves not be like the original Joel and Ellie, and have a completely new spin on the characters, which, I saw some people having an issue with, because it kind of defeats the purpose of wanting to make a video game adaptation by changing how a character acts in a video game, in the television or movie adaptation of said video game, which leaves you with the question of like, well, why don't you just make something different if you're just going to change a pre-established character and how they act and their personality to be, why not just make a new character in that way, in that regard?
I mean, yes, that sentiment, I agree. I don't know where you're pulling this from.
It was like it started when it was interviewing the actress for Ellie. I can't remember her name.
Bella Ramsey.
She was advised to not play the game, which I get from like an acting perspective. Like, oh, you don't want to be, too much like Ellie, like exactly verbatim in every. You don't want to
replicate. You want to make it fresh and new and exciting and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But it seems weird to be saying, despite that, oh, don't play the game. Don't play the thing that this is based off of. As if it's this, trying to treat it as if it's its own unique individual thing and not an adaptation of a pre-established IP. Which once again brings up the question of, why are you making something based off a story that's already been told while changing those characters when you can just make a new story to make it more interesting? Because Last of Us is a big world, and we keep getting the Joel and Ellie stuff.
Okay. I mean, I see what you're saying. I just think I think it's a moot point, because if we look to just exactly replicate that limits creativity and it limits ideas, and it puts a box on what we're able to do. I don't know where you're getting this from. Everything I've seen, I did see the don't play the game thing or whatever, but like everything I've seen from trailers and interviews and quotes and so forth getting thrown around, because my timeline is obsessed with this fucking shit. Even though I don't really care that much. Like, I'm interested in the show. I want to watch the show. I'm excited about the show because the trailers have looked fantastic. But everything I've seen is just, we're getting the Last of Us story again, but expanded.
Definitely said that with the Bill stuff, but...
And even shortly, the the short sequences that we've seen of Bella, where like we see her speak and do things. She's Ellie. She's like from the like. There's one clip in particular where like she's like mocking whoever she's with, and she's like pretending to sound like a clicker or some shit. And
Yeah.
it's totally like an out of pocket joke that you should not say, and it's totally 100% Ellie. Like that's Ellie. So yeah, I don't know what you read or what you if you're just calling that, but like.
Just gives me it's not like this is one of those things where I'm like it's gonna be bad. It's just already messing up.
Yeah.
But it does say like, okay, this could be bad. It could be averagely written. It could be poorly written. It could be well written. It's kind of up in the air. And that always is the case with any kind of adaptation of a video game. It's why it's become better in recent years. Like things like Arcane, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, the Cuphead show. That was all just last year. So obviously it's not so much like it was before, where it's like a video game adaptation. It's gonna be bad. Though, in the live action sphere, we definitely haven't gotten a lot of those good adaptations of video game properties.
Yeah.
And, that could fall into the same pit hole. They could just make that mistake again, but they could not. And this is one of those games that has a higher chance than, let's say, Warcraft of being good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we are now in an era where you can't just automatically assume an adaptation from a video game is going to be bad. You can't just assume that anymore. Like you can make a qualified case for a lot of different, adaptations that we've seen in recent years. Witcher, Sonic the Hedgehog, Uncharted had elements, but I'd like to see it be a little better. And then, you bring up Arcane and Cyberpunk, which I haven't seen either of those shows, but you have, and the consensus seems to be that they're phenomenal. So yeah, it's we're getting there. We're getting there, and I think it'll be. We're damn near to the point to where it's on the same level of any other adaptation. You just have to pick your property right. You have to pick your stories right. You have to pick your scripts right, and make the right choices. But like, are you going to tell me that The Witcher is, in the lower echelon of adaptations? Like, there's some bad adaptations like out there, from books to TV series to music. Like, there's bad adaptations of everything everywhere. So I think in terms of coming from a video game is no longer a death sentence.
It is not.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, all that to say, every Sunday reaction. Last of Us TV show.
See you next
Connor,
week.
yeah, not quite. I do want to speak real quick. We're not gonna dive too deep into it, but let's go ahead and talk about real quick what we've been playing. I'll start. If you've been listening to Piggy Bank or been listening to me over the last couple of weeks, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII. We had a conversation on next Saturday's Piggy Bank about Final Fantasy VII, so I'm still playing Final Fantasy VII. I'm having a great time. It's a good game. Surprise, seeing nobody. Like, so Connor, what have you been playing?
I've just been playing Guilty Gear Strive. I've been trying to get better than my the people that I'm fighting, and I hadn't had much time to play video games, so been sticking with that.
Fair enough.
Not
There we go.
much special.
Well, there we go. That's that's it. We don't have anything interesting to add in that case. So that is going to be it for your weekly 2 Penny Gamescast episode 129. I minimized my window. Yeah, 129. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Remember, you can get this show every Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Watch us record it live over at twitch.tv/2pennygames every Sunday. And until next time, have a great time. Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Bye.